Detective Rodriguez, I'm being stalked. Those 4 words started an investigation that would reveal something far more terrifying than anyone expected. What I'm about to tell you are 2 cases where the person sitting in the police station, trembling with fear, begging for protection, was the predator. This is going to mess with your head. Let's begin. Story 1, the woman who created her own nightmare. This is the story of Maya, a 28-year-old graphic designer whose life became a living nightmare, or did it? Maya walked into the Seattle Police Department 3 months ago, visibly shaking. Detective Rodriguez noticed the fear in her eyes immediately. It started so small, Maya whispered. I thought I was being paranoid. She showed him photos. A silver sedan outside her apartment. Same car. Different days. Always there. Then flowers on her desk at work with no card. A cappuccino waiting at her cafe. Someone had ordered her exact drink ahead of time. But it was the note that changed everything. Tucked under her windshield wiper, "You looked beautiful today." Her neighbor Claire approached her in the hallway. "Maya, honey, have you noticed that man? He was asking about you yesterday." Maya felt her blood run cold. Over the next month, things got worse. Maya documented everything. Photos of a man in a baseball cap outside her building, his face always blurry. Screenshots of a fake Instagram profile following all her friends. Then the worst one, a photo of her apartment window, taken from the street at night. "He knows everything about me," Maya told Rodriguez. Rodriguez asked about recent breakups. Maya mentioned Aaron. 2 dates, 6 months ago, ended amicably. Maya started therapy with Dr. Patel. "I can't sleep," she admitted. "I installed cameras. Extra locks. I check every shadow." Then came the incident that changed everything. Walking to her car after work, Maya heard footsteps behind her. She ran, fumbled with her keys, locked herself in. In her rearview mirror, a man in a baseball cap, watching from under a streetlight. The next morning, she found a Polaroid tucked in her doorframe, Maya sleeping in her bed, photographed through her window. "We're going to catch him," Rodriguez promised. 2 days later, Detective Kim pulled Rodriguez aside. "We have a problem." She'd reviewed security footage from Maya's workplace, apartment, the cafe, the parking lot. The man in the baseball cap doesn't exist. Not on any camera except Maya's photos. They interviewed Claire again. "I never actually saw anyone," she admitted. "Maya seemed so scared that I said yes. I thought maybe I'd missed something. But I did see her photographing her own car once. There was nothing there." Dr. Patel, with a warrant, revealed Maya had delusional disorder with persecutory themes. She's filed similar reports in 2 other cities. They tracked down Aaron. After their 2 dates ended, Maya had called him 47 times in 1 week. Created fake profiles to follow him. He'd filed a restraining order against her. In Maya's apartment, Rodriguez found a locked drawer, the baseball cap, a camera with timer function, burner phones, and a journal. "They need to understand. If I'm in danger, maybe they'll care. Maybe Aaron will see what he lost." When Rodriguez arrived at Maya's workplace, she looked up hopefully. "Did you catch him?" His expression told her everything. Her smile crumbled. "He's real," she whispered desperately. "I'm not making this up. He's real." But he wasn't. He never was. Maya Chen was diagnosed with delusional disorder. She created her own stalker because, in her mind, being in danger gave her life meaning. The scariest part? She truly believed every word. If Maya's story disturbed you, this next case will make you question everything about who can be a victim and who can be a predator. Because James Morrison understood society's assumptions. And he weaponized every single one of them. This is the story of the perfect victim. Except, he wasn't. Before I tell you this story, I need you to set aside everything you think you know about stalking. Because this case shattered every assumption I had about who can be a victim, and who can be a predator. This is the story of James Morrison. And for 2 years, everyone believed he was being stalked by his ex-wife. Everyone was wrong. The community center in Portland was packed that evening. About 40 people had shown up for a stalking awareness event, and they were all there to hear James speak. James Morrison was 42, handsome in a weathered way, with the kind of exhausted eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and constant vigilance. He stood at the podium, his hands gripping the edges like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "I never thought I'd be standing here, asking for help like this." He clicked a remote, and an image appeared on the screen behind him. A woman with dark hair, photographed from a distance with a telephoto lens. She was standing across the street from a house, just watching. "This is my ex-wife, Vanessa," James said. "We divorced 2 years ago. And she won't leave me alone." The room filled with sympathetic murmurs. James had clearly struck a chord. He clicked through more photos. Vanessa's car parked outside what he said was his apartment. A blurry figure that he claimed was her, sitting in a cafe where he had lunch. Screenshots of hundreds of text messages. "I miss you. We can fix this. Please just talk to me." It started small, James explained, his voice thick with emotion. After the divorce, she'd text occasionally. "I tried to be kind about it. We were married for 8 years, I didn't want to be cruel. But when kindness didn't work, I tried being firm. Then I blocked her. And that's when things escalated." The audience was captivated. Here was a man, vulnerable and clearly suffering, brave enough to speak out about something that society often dismisses, male victims of stalking. 1 week later, James sat in his lawyer's office, presenting a thick folder of evidence. "The restraining order should be granted without question," his lawyer said confidently. "You've documented over 200 incidents. The judge will see that this is serious harassment." James nodded, but he looked broken. "I just want my life back. I want to be able to go on a date without her interfering. I want to sleep without wondering if she's outside my window." James had joined a support group for stalking victims. Every Thursday night, he'd sit in a circle with 7 other people, mostly women, and share his story. "How are you coping, James?" the group leader asked during one session. James ran his hands through his hair, clearly exhausted. "I can't date. I can't move on. Every time I try to start a relationship, Vanessa ruins it. She contacts the women, sends them fake evidence that we're still together, tells them lies about me." He pulled out his phone and showed the group a recent example. 6 weeks earlier, James had gone on a date with a woman named Rachel. They'd met at a wine bar, and for the first time in years, James felt like maybe, just maybe, he could be happy again. Rachel was funny, intelligent, and kind. By the end of the night, they'd made plans for a second date. But the next morning, everything fell apart. James's phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "I can't believe you lied to me. Please don't contact me again." Confused, he'd called her. "Rachel, what are you talking about? Your wife just sent me photos of you two together from last week. She says you're still married, that you're a serial cheater, that you do this to women all the time. Those are old photos. James had pleaded. "We're divorced. This is exactly what she does." But Rachel had already hung up. Back in the support group, the other members shook their heads in sympathy. "Have you thought about moving?" one member asked. "Starting over somewhere new?" James let out a bitter laugh. "I did. Twice. She found me both times. I don't know how, but she always finds me." That week, James showed the group a new text from Vanessa. "I saw you bought new curtains. Blue looks good in the bedroom." His hands were shaking as he held up the phone. "She's been in my home. Or she's watching through my windows. I don't feel safe anywhere." The court hearing was scheduled for a Monday morning. James sat with his lawyer on one side of the courtroom. Across the aisle, Vanessa sat with her attorney. She looked thin, defeated, with dark circles under her eyes. When she glanced at James, there was no anger in her expression. Just exhaustion. James's lawyer presented the evidence methodically. Photos of Vanessa's car outside James's apartment. Screenshots of texts. A timeline of 47 documented incidents in just the last month. "Your Honor," James's lawyer concluded, "my client has been terrorized for 2 years. He's asking for basic protection, the right to live his life without constant surveillance and harassment." Vanessa's lawyer stood. "Your Honor," Ms. Morrison categorically denies these allegations. She's moved on with her life. She's in a relationship with someone new. She has no interest in pursuing or contacting her ex-husband. Then how do you explain the evidence? James's lawyer shot back. The judge, clearly troubled by the volume of documentation, granted a temporary restraining order. James exhaled in relief. Across the courtroom, Vanessa put her head in her hands, tears streaming down her face. Detective Sarah was assigned to investigate Vanessa for stalking and potential restraining order violations. She'd been on the force for 12 years and had handled dozens of stalking cases. But something about this one bothered her from the start. She drove to Vanessa's house on a Thursday afternoon. Vanessa answered the door looking exhausted but composed. "Ms. Morrison, I'm Detective Peter. I need to ask you some questions about your ex-husband's allegations." Vanessa nodded and let her in. "I know you've probably heard this before," Vanessa said, sitting down heavily on her couch, "but I'm not stalking James. I haven't contacted him. I've moved on." "Mr. Morrison has substantial evidence that suggests otherwise," Peter said, pulling out her tablet with photos and messages. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, not tears of guilt, but of frustration. "Detective, please. Actually, look at the evidence. I've been telling the police for months to really examine it, but nobody will listen." Peter paused. There was something in Vanessa's voice that made her pay attention. "The photo from last Tuesday, where he claims I was parked outside his apartment?" Vanessa pulled out her own phone, showing her work badge logs. "I was at my office until 8 p.m. that night. I have electronic records, security footage, 3 co-workers who saw me. I couldn't have been at his apartment." Peter looked at the photo James had submitted. It showed a woman in a car, but the image was grainy, taken from a distance. "And look at this one," Vanessa continued, her voice gaining strength. "The woman he says is me, watching his house last week. Look at the body type. The hair color. That's not me." Peter enlarged the photo. Vanessa was right, the woman was shorter, heavier build, different hair length. "Every photo he has is like this," Vanessa said. "Taken from far away, just blurry enough that you can't be certain, but he tells everyone it's me, and people believe him." Detective Peter went back to her office and started digging. Really digging. She pulled phone records for the stalker texts that James had been receiving. The messages came from a burner phone, purchased at a convenience store. She pulled the purchase records. The credit card used? Registered to James Morrison. Peter felt her stomach drop. She interviewed Rachel, the woman from the failed date. Rachel confirmed the story. Vanessa had sent her messages and photos. But when Peter traced the account that had sent them, it wasn't Vanessa's. It was a fake profile, created 3 days before James's date with Rachel. The IP address? It traced back to James's home internet connection. Peter pulled security footage from James's gym, where he'd claimed Vanessa had started showing up on his treadmill row. She reviewed 3 months of footage. Vanessa never appeared. Not once. She interviewed James's neighbor. "I've lived next to James for a year," the neighbor said. "I've never seen an ex-wife. But I have seen him standing on his balcony with a camera, photographing women walking on the street below. I thought it was weird, but I minded my own business." The final piece came when Peter did a background check on James. Articles from his hometown newspaper in Minnesota popped up. Local man accuses 3 women of stalking over 5 years. Second restraining order request dismissed due to lack of evidence. Woman exonerated after investigation finds no proof of harassment. There was a pattern. James had dated women briefly, became intensely attached, and when they left, he'd accuse them of stalking. He'd file police reports, get temporary restraining orders, ruin their reputations. In every case, investigations had eventually cleared the women. Peter went back to interview Vanessa, this time with the truth on her side. "When I filed for divorce," Vanessa explained, her voice steady now, "James couldn't accept it. He needed to be the victim. It's the only narrative that makes sense to him, that he's always the one being wronged, being pursued, being unable to escape. It gives him control." She showed Peter her own evidence, 8 months of therapy records. GPS data from her phone showing she was never at the locations James claimed. Testimonials from her current boyfriend, her employer, her friends. "I've been in a relationship with someone else for almost a year," Vanessa said. "I'm happy. I've moved on. But James won't let me. This," she gestured to the restraining order paperwork, "this is how he keeps me in his life. By making me the villain." Detective Peter arrived at James's apartment with a warrant and his lawyer. James answered the door, confused but cooperative. "Mr. Morrison, we need to talk about the evidence you've submitted." They sat in his living room. Peter laid out the case methodically. "The burner phone that's been sending you texts. It was purchased with your credit card." James blinked. "That's impossible. Vanessa must have stolen it." "The fake social media profiles that contacted Rachel and your other dates? Created from your home IP address. Vanessa has my Wi-Fi password. The photos of your ex-wife outside your apartment? We've identified the women in them. None of them are Vanessa Morrison. They're random women you photographed on the street." James's face went red. His hand started shaking. "No," he said, his voice rising. "No. This is exactly what she does. Don't you see? She's manipulating you. She's manipulated everyone." "Mr. Morrison," Peter said calmly, "we found articles about you from Minnesota. 3 other women you accused of stalking. All exonerated. They were stalking me." James stood up, pacing. "Just because the police couldn't prove it doesn't mean it didn't happen." His lawyer put a hand on his arm. "James. She's watching me right now." James shouted, pointing at his window. "She's always watching. She won't let me go. Can't you understand that? But his voice cracked on the last words, and in that crack, Detective Peter heard it, not the fear of a victim, but the desperation of someone whose carefully constructed narrative was falling apart. Mr. Morrison, I'm recommending that the restraining order be reversed. And we're opening an investigation into multiple counts of filing false police reports and harassment. James collapsed back onto his couch, his face in his hands. You don't understand, he whispered. Nobody understands. 2 weeks later, Vanessa sat in her living room with her boyfriend, David. The evening news played in the background. Ex-husband's restraining order overturned after investigation reveals fabricated evidence. Vanessa exhaled slowly. For the first time in 2 years, she felt like she could breathe. It's over, David said, taking her hand. I hope so, Vanessa replied. But there was still uncertainty in her voice. I really hope so. James sat alone, his laptop open. He was scrolling through a dating app, looking at profiles. He stopped on one, a woman named Sarah, 36, loves hiking and coffee shops. He smiled and screenshotted her profile. On his desk, next to his laptop, sat a journal. The most recent entry, written in neat handwriting. Met someone new. Coffee next week. Her name is Sarah. She seems different from the others, kinder, more understanding. But I've learned my lesson. If things go badly, if she tries to leave like the others did, I need to be prepared. I need to document everything. For my own protection. James Morrison never stopped believing he was the victim. Because in his mind, he was. The scariest stalkers aren't always the ones hiding in the shadows. Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight, wrapped in the perfect disguise, victimhood. This case reveals a dark truth about how bias works in our justice system. We're conditioned to believe certain narratives, that stalkers are usually men, that women are usually victims, that someone who presents as vulnerable must be telling the truth. James Morrison exploited every one of those biases. He understood that as a well-spoken, professional man claiming to be stalked by his crazy ex-wife, he'd be believed. And he was. For 2 years, he weaponized the legal system, support groups, and public sympathy to continue tormenting the woman who'd simply wanted to leave him. The real stalker was the one everyone believed was being stalked. And that's what made him so dangerous. 2 cases. 2 people who convinced everyone, police, lawyers, support groups, even judges, that they were victims of stalking. But in both cases, they were the stalkers all along. Maya's story shows us the tragedy of mental illness, how the mind can create threats that feel absolutely real, and how someone can genuinely believe they're in danger when the danger is coming from within. James's story shows us something darker, the calculated manipulation of a system designed to protect victims. He understood that nobody questions a man brave enough to admit he's being stalked. He weaponized sympathy. So, what can we learn from these cases? First, real stalking is serious and devastating. The majority of stalking cases are legitimate, and victims deserve to be believed and protected. But second, we need to investigate thoroughly. We need to verify. Because false reports don't just waste police resources, they destroy lives. Vanessa Morrison spent 2 years under a restraining order, unable to prove her innocence while her ex-husband systematically ruined her reputation. The truth is rarely simple. And sometimes, the person screaming for help is the person we need protection from. If these stories made you think, hit that like button. If they disturbed you, and they should, share this video because people need to understand that psychological manipulation comes in many forms. Subscribe for more true crime stories that challenge everything you think you know. Drop a comment telling me which case disturbed you more, Maya, who created her stalker, or James, who played the victim to perfection. And remember, question everything. Verify always. Because the scariest monsters don't hide in the dark. They hide in plain sight.